So hey guys, in this session we are going to see how we can implement the JWT validation policy using AWS. So here AWS will act as a third party which will generate or give us a token that we will pass in our API manager to check this policy. Okay, so this complete part I have divided into two steps. The first step is configuring the AWS to generate the access token and get the validation URL. And the second step is go to the API manager of any point platform and implement the JWT validation on our API. Okay, so let's go to the step one. So the first step is configuring AWS. So for this, you need to have this AWS account. You can have the trial account as well. Then you need to log into the console part. So once you log into the console part, you will get a window like this. From here, you need to search Cognito. Once you search for the Cognito, click on this. Now go to the manage user pool. Now I have already configured one, so I will give a walkthrough how I have done that part. So this is a user pool that I have created. You can also click on this create a user pool and then you will do the rest of the part that I'm going to give a walkthrough. So I'll click on this. So here once you create your pool, then you will get a pool ID and pool ARN. So once you create, then you need to go to this app client, and here you need to create one application which will give you a client ID and client secret which will be required while making a request to get the token. And here I have given the expiration time, so it is 1 day and 5 minutes. So it is saying must be between 60 minutes and 3650 days. And these are the things I have configured here. So these only I have configured this token expiration time, and here you need to, by default this one is enabled. Whatever the rest of part enable, you can disable that part. You need to select this enable one and enable token revocation. Once you do this, you can click on the save. Once this part is done, then you need to go to the domain name, and here you need to select your URL. So this URL will help you in getting the token. So this is the URL. You will keep it in the postman and hit it to get the access token. And once you create the domain, you need to go to the resource server. Here I will define some custom scope. So I have defined here demo identifier. So this is the identifier name, and the scope I have mentioned API read and API write. And you can give a description according to your wish. And this particular syntax is not mandatory. You can directly give the read and write. No need to use the underscore. And once you create the scope, you need to go to the app client setting. And in the app client setting, you need to enable this part, Cognito user pool. If you have any callback URL, you can give it here. And in the auth 2.0, you need to select the client credential. So I have select client credential. You can have this implicit or authorization code grant as well. And this is the custom scope that I have created. So I have enabled both the scope for this particular application that I have created. Once this part is done, I will pick the domain name, which is here. I'll pick this domain name and I will post it in the postman. So this is the domain name that I have. So the domain name format is something like this. This is the URL that I will post in the description box. Here you need to specify your domain name and a grant type, that grant type you have selected, and the scope, for which scope you want the access token. And method will be post. Content type we need to pass in this content type format application x-www-form url-encoded, and the query param we will pass these two things. If I come over here, so now if you see, we have in the query param we have this grant type, we have grant type, client credential, and the scope, the identifier name that I have created, the name I have given for, if I show you in the resource server, this is the identifier name. So this identifier name I have given, and this is the scope name. So once you do this part, you need to go to the header part as well. And in the header, you need to specify the content type. If you don't do this part, you will get an error. Then you need to go to the authorization part, and here you have to select the basic auth. Once you select the basic auth, it will ask you to give the username and password. So here we'll pass the client ID and client secret of the app that we have created. So if you go to this app client, here you have this app client ID and client secret. So I have copied this part and paste it over here. Once I do this part, if I click on this send, go to the para. Once I do this part, if I click on this send, it will give me an access token. So now we are successfully getting the access token. This is the expiration time, which is of 5 minutes, and token type is bearer. Now our second step is configuring the API manager. So for this, I have created one RAML where I have included the traits. So in the trait, I have this header authorization. So this authorization key I am expecting in the header, which will have the value of type string. And we have this two endpoint. First is test, and second one is bar. So in both, I have implemented the JWT validation policy, and both are having the get method. So then you need to go on this API manager part. So let me go back. So in the API manager, you will select from here whatever the policy or whatever the RAML you have published to the exchange. You will get it over here. Once you do this part, you will get an option to, you will see your API is listed here. Then you need to click on that, go to the policy section, and here you need to click on this apply new policy. Here you will have an option JWT validation. So once you click JWT validation, it will ask you for the configure policy. Here I have let the default option. I have not changed any option here. The default configuration I'm using. So I've used this HTTP bearer authentication header. You can use the custom expression as well if you want any specific other key name. Let's say if you want to have the token with the name JWT or any other name, then you can specify like this. You can also have in the query param. No, it's not mandatory to have in the header. So whatever the expression you're going to give here, from there it will fetch the access token. Then we have this signing method. So by default, I have selected the RSA one. This is the signing key length. And here in the JWT key origin, we have two options, either text or either JWKS. So I have used JWKS URL. So this JWKS URL, you will get it from here in this format. This is the format of the JWKS URL. So let me copy this part. Okay, so this is the format of the JWKS URL that you need to pass. So here, this is the reason, and this is the user pool ID. So the reason you will get from here, if you once you create your uh, once you create a user pool, you will have a pool ID something like this. So till this, you have the reason, and if you completely copy this part, this is your pool ID. So we need to paste it over there, reason and user pool ID, and rest of the link will be same. Now once you give the JWKS URL, this is the caching TTL. I have let it by default. You can click on this skip client ID validation because every token, whenever you generate access token, there is a client ID for that. So I will click on this skip client ID validation, and you can apply the policy either on the resource level or to the complete method. So let me give a demo on how I have applied to the resource level. So we had two endpoints. First is test and the second one is bar. If I show you the configuration, so here what I have did, I have left the default configuration here, and in the JWKS URL, I have given the URL by putting my reason and user pool ID. And here I have selected the skip client ID validation. Now, if you want to give some restriction based on the scope, so let's say we had, so here the resource server, we created two scope, API read and API write. So let's say for one endpoint or for one method, you want to have only read scope, and for another endpoint, you want to have the write scope. And based on that, you want to give access to particular client, or like you want to add some restriction that which client access what method or what endpoint. So for that, you need to click on this validate custom claim. In this, we have the format something like this. So in this format, you need to pass. So here I have specified, so this is the scope. This is the example. So I have given the scope here, and the rest of the thing will same. So wherever the foo is written, you need to replace it with the uh, scope part. So I have written here vars.claimset.scope. Now the scope name that I have specified. So in the resource server, I have shown you, I have given the identifier name this, and then we had a scope name. So here I am specifying the API read, and then I have applied this configuration to a specific method and resource. Once you click on this, it will ask you for the condition. So here I have selected get method, and the endpoint is this. So let's say in this in a similar endpoint, you have another method, and on which you want to restrict, or you want to give access to the right one, then you can implement the policy again. So in this way, I have configured this one. This is for the test endpoint, and the similar thing I have done with the bar endpoint. So in the bar endpoint, I have let the same thing here, and in this scope, I have written the API write, okay, and rest of the thing is same. Only the endpoint and the condition is changed. If I show you the detail, so in this, okay, so if I click on this resource matching, so for the endpoint test, having a get method, what I have given the validation scope here is validate custom claim is true, and here I have given the scope for token API read. So for this test endpoint and this, so the get method for this endpoint test, I have given this particular scope. So whenever I generate a access token with this scope, and once I pass this access token to hit this URL or hit this endpoint, then only it will get hit, else it will throw an error by saying that invalid token. And the similar thing is here. So here I have given API write. Okay. Now I have deployed this application over this runtime manager. So my application is deployed. So let me click on this. So I have deployed the application on the Cloud Hub. Now I will do the testing part. So the first thing is I will call the read scope, which I have allowed only for the test endpoint. So only for this, not for this, the red one. So I will click on send. I got the access token. Control C. And if I pass this access token to particular this one, it will not allow us to hit this URL. It will give me an error response. So let's see. If I click on this send, it is saying invalid token. Now if the same access token, if I pass it here, let me hit it. Okay, now if I pass the same token here, and if I click on this send, it is allowing me to get the response of this test endpoint, because the scope, the condition we have defined here for this is the scope should contain this particular one. So if I show you the access token here, So here if you see, we have this key scope and we have this particular value. So when I wrote this particular condition here, dot where's dot claim set dot scope, then this particular scope key is present in my access token and the value is this. So once it is matching, then it is only allowing us to hit this endpoint. Now we'll do the similar thing with the bar endpoint. So I'll go here, I'll go in the generate token, I will write here API write key valued it, click on send. Now we have endpoint here, so copy this and let me go to the JWT and here I will show you what are the things contained here. So here if you see, scope is scope for token API write. Now I will try to pass this to the test endpoint. So we have allowed only read scope here. Let me pass this one and let's see what happens. If I click on this send, it is saying invalid token. Now if I pass the same access token to this one, and click on this key value edit and send. So now it is allowing me to hit the bar endpoint. So this is for one app that I have created. In the similar way, I can create multiple app. So let's say if you want to create another app, you'll click on this add another app. You'll give the app name, let's say test another. You can give here the token expiration. So I have given 1 minute. Now here you need to disable this, and rest of the thing will be similar. So once you create, it will give you this another application. You click on this show me detail, you will have this client ID and client secrets. So this client ID and client secret will be used when you want to generate the access token. So I'll go to the authorization and here you need to pass that value. Once you pass the value, you will get a access token like this. If I show you something more here in the resource server, then we can't use the special character. So let's say testing scope, give name read, or you can write rw here. Here you can specify read and write. Once you do this part, click on the save changes. So here now you have another scope. So this is the another scope that I have created. Now let me go to the app client setting. So once you go to the app client setting, now you will have another option as well, testing a scope rw. So once I click on this and click on save changes, or instead of adding into this, you can have another one as well. So just click on this Cognito user pool. This is the another application test another that I have created, and this is the earlier application that I was giving the demo. Okay, so in this application I will click on this Cognito user pool, click on this client credential part, and the scope I am allowing only this. Okay, so this scope we have created now, this app we have created now, and now we'll click on this save changes. Once I do this part, and if I want to access the token, I'll go here. So the URL will be same because the domain we have already here. We haven't created any further domain, or we haven't deleted this domain. So the domain is same. App we have created one, this test another. In the app client setting, we have configured what scope I'm going to define for this this particular app. Okay, and in the resource server we have specified one more resource or one more scope. Okay, now let's get the access token for this particular application. So from by using the credential of this particular application, we are going to ask for an access token. So here I have allowed only this scope, and if I hit this application now, So the first thing is I need to pass the username and password. So I'll go here. I'll click on this app client. Come here. I'll copy this part, paste it over here. Paste it here. Now in the header part, we need to pass this content type. This is the mandatory part here. So let me go to now param. So in the param, we need to pass the grant type. So we have specified the grant type is. So for the grant type, you need to click on this app client setting. So this test another application that we have created. We have set the grant type client credential. So this will same. Now for the scope we are uh, the scope we have defined here is testing scope. So we'll write testing scope. So the first thing is identifier name and that the scope name or resource name and then this RW. Click on key value edit. Now hit this application. So here we got access token. Let me see what are the things present here. So copy this and go to the this part and paste it over here. So here you will see the scope is this that we have defined in the resource server, and this is the your JWKS URL, and this is the client ID. So this client ID is similar to the app client ID that we have. So let me show you the app client ID here. Go here. So this app client ID is 749. So it is 749. So the similar part is here. Okay. And this is the expiration time. And this is the version. So in this way, we can implement this JWT validation part using this AWS. Okay. So in this way, we can use this policy and we can configure. Okay. Now here we have some other thing also like validate audience claim. So this will be validated if the audience claim contain at least one audience. So whatever the audience is there, then expiration claim mandatory. So based on your requirement, there are multiple options that you can use and you can apply this policy. Okay. So this is all about how you can configure the AWS and how you will configure the API manager to use the JWT validation policy on your Mule API. So I will add this URL, this how to generate the token URL part and this JWS URL part in the description box. And yeah, thanks for watching this video.